Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you might be joining from. I am HR Funk, and welcome to my BHSS, which is BH Spring Solutions live stream. If some of you saw the announcement video that I put out earlier today, and I said that it was just going to be us talking at the time, I thought I was telling you the truth. But about 3 o'clock this afternoon, I ended up talking to one of my friends, Mark Allen, who's going to be joining us shortly from BH Spring Solution. And during the course of our conversation, he agreed to come on the show and be a guest and talk to us about not only BH Spring Solutions, but classic handgun designs in general. And hopefully this is going to be some fantastic information that we're all going to get something out of. And before I bring Mark on, I have a couple of other just channel advisories to tell you about, beginning with tomorrow morning. We've got the 8 a.m. video. It's going to be 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. And this is going to be on the Girsan MC14T. Now, some of you might recall that I tested that pistol a while back, and there were some issues with it. It shot really, really well, but I had some functioning issues with it. And be sure to tune in tomorrow to hear how this story evolved, because it's one of the most extraordinary things that's happened to me since I've had a YouTube channel. And I'm very, I guess, excited for all of you to hear the story about what took place and see what's going on with this new version of the MC14T. By the way, I was out shooting it earlier today. There is a, see if I can get it so you can see it, 7 yards standing, unsupported with the MC14T. And I forget what ammunition I was using, Remington 95 grain full metal jackets. There's a 10-yard group. And there's a 15-yard group, and the one that's way over here was me firing a bad shot. These three were all pretty good. That's 15 yards from that relatively compact MC14T. So I'm, as I said, happy to get that information out, and I hope you can all tune in tomorrow morning for that video premiere. Also coming up, and I put something out a few days ago on the community chat on YouTube, talking about the fact that I have a new CCW handgun. And it's been fun having everyone try to guess what it is in that photo. And the photo was intentionally kind of vague because I wanted to build some anticipation out there. Somebody did actually guess it. Actually, maybe a couple of somebodies have guessed it at this point. But you'll just have to wait. That's going to be coming up probably a week from tomorrow. I'm also going to be continuing the Real Avid series that I started just this past Wednesday. And as I mentioned in that video, I've been enjoying using those Real Avid products. And the more that I use them, the more I like them. So I'm happy to put that information out to all of you. So hopefully you'll get something out of that. And if you're into, building rifles or just maintaining the rifles you have or what have you, hopefully you'll get some good information out of that. So what I'm going to do in just a moment is bring my friend Mark on. And Mark is one of the people who, probably more so than just about anybody else I know, has a passion for classic handgun designs, and specifically the P35 high power design and the 1911 handgun. Mark is the person that when I have questions about the P35 high power or the 1911, I get a hold of him because I know he's either going to have the answer or he will be able to get a hold of somebody that'll have the answer very, very quickly. He is extremely knowledgeable, and he has built that passion for those classic handguns into a very successful business that is BH Spring Solutions. And without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and bring Mark onto the show. And Mark, thank you for joining. Thank you for not only being a longtime friend of the channel, but being a longtime personal friend. I appreciate you accepting the invitation this evening, and I know everybody is going to be looking forward to the information you're going to be able to provide. So thank you again for being here.
Howard, thanks for the invite very much.
And as I mentioned when we were getting ready for the show earlier, if you wouldn't mind letting everyone know sort of how BH Spring Solutions came into being, what the genesis was and how it has evolved to the point that it was today.
Well, in 2013, I bought an Arcus made in Bulgaria pistol. And then my father and I bought a couple more. And I wrote a review about this. I was actually sort of moonlighting in my real estate career, writing for gunnews.com. And I did that, kind of on the side for 2 or 3 years. And so I was sort of in this program mode of, writing about whatever I, come across. And I wrote a review about this Arcus Bulgarian handgun, and that I was very impressed by it, and that really my only reservation about it was the availability of spare parts. And the next day I get a message from a guy, just, didn't see this coming. And he said, "Hey, I live in Bulgaria and I carry the same handgun that you just wrote that review about. And I'm going to the factory, the Arcus factory next week. Why don't you send me a list of the parts that you'd like for yours and your father's Arcuses, and I'll see what I can do." And I thinking, how possible is this, right? And so, I sent him, I don't know, a list of like 3 or 4 parts that are kind of unique in the Arcus 98 series compared to high powers. And like 2 weeks later, I get this little box, and I had been ordering a lot of gun parts at the time, like from Remington and Browning, and I get this box, and there's 2 of like every possible pin, part, and spring that I will never need for an Arcus 98. And I had given this guy no money, and I had bought comparable size boxes of parts, and they were $200, $250, and I'm looking at this box, and I'm like having, sort of bad thoughts, numerically. And I remember asking him, writing him an email and saying, "Hey, I don't know how to thank you for this. I certainly want to, get you some money, because I know this costs something, and you let me know what I owe you, and it ended up being a fraction of what I had expected it would be. And well, when that happened, and I'm thinking, well, nobody who has that handgun over here has any springs or parts or components for that gun. And so I asked my new friend, Slav, who is the co-founder of BH Spring Solutions, who I assure you would be here with us, except it's about 2:40 in the morning in Bulgaria right now. So I asked him, how much more of this stuff you think you could get? Because, if you think you could get some more of it, maybe we put this, into kits and like springs and, and things like into kits and put them on eBay, and maybe we make ourselves a little extra ammunition money, and that was like originally the idea. So, he gets a few more springs and he sends them over here, and we put them on eBay, and they sell, and they're gone in like 2 weeks. And, and kind of one thing led to another. And, but what really captured our interest, and I'm going to confess something, what really captured our interest was that we were, as he and I were dissecting the high power pistol, we were consistently making our own high powers better, more accurate, more reliable, better performance, better trigger pulls. And we're like sharing this simultaneously with, thinking it up or inventing it, or, strengthening a spring, or, or decreasing the strength of a spring for a specific function, and balancing it with a balancing, a counteracting spring, somewhere else. So this was something that kind of made BH Spring Solutions from the beginning different. Was, we didn't have it. In my 31 years in real estate, I had the good fortune of training and coaching people for several years, and teaching business planning and teaching life planning. And I can tell you that Slav and I employed none of that at any point in this whole adventure. But what is more the right picture is there's a book called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" And I read that book by the advice of a dear friend in 1999. And in essence, what it um, promotes, and there's many years and versions of this book called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" But it promotes making your vocation or your money making vocation whatever it is that you love and gravitate most towards, so that it won't be so much like work. It'll be more like your passion. It'll be more like, that. And when I read that book, there was no means of really applying that at the time. Um, but I think what it did though was it kind of gave me an open eye on things happening in life, that when something did come along that really kind of trips my trigger, I recognize it as, well, this can at least be a hobby, and so it turns out that Slav got kicked out of the Arcus company the second time he went back trying to buy springs, because they didn't believe he was trying to buy springs to improve anybody's gun. They thought that he was trying to treat them like a spring company and they're a gun company, and it kind of went bad, and he gets kicked out of there. And that was how fast we were out of business. Was the source of our supply all of a sudden kicks him out and escorted him off their property. And so the next day he had acquired a 22 long rifle conversion kit for Arcus 98s. We've never seen those over here. And he needed a new recoil spring, and he figured out that since they kicked him out at Arcus and didn't have one of those springs for his conversion kit, he decided to find a spring company on his own and get one of those springs made. And so the next day after getting kicked out of Arcus, he's at a spring manufacturer who just happened to also be Arcus's spring manufacturer. And had manufactured lots and lots and lots of high power springs for a couple of different high power manufacturers on the planet. And so he gets kicked out one day, and the next day, like, no kidding, 5 minutes after he walks into the spring manufacturer, he's sitting in the CEO's office telling the CEO about the ideas that he and some American guy have, about, how we might be able to develop these products called spring kits that together can create and present or a bundle of benefits in a person's handgun. This we only saw a need for because Slav and I had tried to buy replacement springs for our own guns. And the high power was a drastically underserved pistol at the time. And so there was just this opening in the market. And so we decided to fill it. And, but the fun part for us was we were always filling needs in the market with things that we were developing. And we were able to make up, because in other words, when we said that, a high power spring kit can bring, 12 possible beneficial improvements or function optimizations in a high power pistol, we can say that because we have now done it in our own pistols, which, hopefully that feels a little different for the high power owner, for the consumer, is that's really what we're doing, is we're sharing with all of our friends what we're doing to our own guns, basically.
And we kind of watched that over the latter part of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century, where interest in the high power seemed to wane. I think there was always a very loyal core following for the P35, but eventually that started to taper off. And we got to the point where back in 2018, FN/Browning discontinued the original P35. And then there was like this boom in popularity for those handguns. And over the years, there have been some clones. And I know you told me in the past, but how many different high power variants are there floating around out there that you're able to service?
If you count numbers of manufacturers and numbers of the different manufacturers, different generations of, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's 19
Okay.
total. In other words, there would be something unique or different about 3 distinct different generations of FN Browning high powers. I take that back 4. And there's distinct differences: internal versus external extractor, type 1 versus type 2 steer lever, manual safeties versus no manual safety, humped feed ramp versus straight feed ramp, and some of these in varying different combinations, but at least 19.
And you're actually able to optimize or improve all 19 different variants with the products that you're manufacturing at this point, correct?
Yes.
And
And we test, and one of the when Leon Hubert, a 35-year designer for FN, formally came with us, and he and my partner Slav in Bulgaria and Leon Hubert in Liège, Belgium, had managed over the course of about 2.5 years to completely redesign the entire trigger subassembly in the high power pistol, which had never been done before anywhere. This is truly a stunning moment for myself, to be able to write a little piece of high power history and improvements to the design in such a way as that. But the reason it took 2.5 years was because we had to go consider the frame area of the high power pistol is similar among all of the different manufacturers that there have been. However, the size of the area where the front of your springs live, the depth and the lateral size of it or the width of it is variable. So this has a direct impact on how those springs are pressurized. So you go from one pistol to the next pistol, and what works great in this is dysfunctional in that. And so we had a lot of pistols. So the design not only had to be a good design, but there had to be so much margin in this design that it would tolerate the design differences and the dimensional differences in that area of all of the different designs. So, but the great thing was when the Springfield SA-35 came along, we were compatible. When the Gersan MCP-35s came along, we were compatible. The depth of that area, the width of that area that I've been talking about, theirs was within the minimum maximum that we had seen before. So everything just worked. And so that was cool.
And you mentioned Leon a couple of moments ago, and I just want to make everyone aware of who he is. When we were talking earlier, his lineage as an engineer is basically the second generation from John Moses Browning. There was John Browning, there was Judene Sev, and then Leon. So I mean, he's from an engineering standpoint a direct descendant of John Browning, and still is working on the designs that were pioneered by John Browning. I think that's just amazing, and the fact that he is still improving on those designs, coming up with new trigger systems, coming up with the safety fast system, those types of things, just is tremendous, I think.
But Leon Hubert, if I can give you just a little bit of context for who he is, what he did, and which is actually a very, very long resume. The man has presided over the designing of bridges, sewer systems. His design work with Mitsubishi Motors is another story that is profound. Um, his some of his genius in the firearms design is something that I believe has only ever been seen before by in the form of John Moses Browning. Um, but Leon Hubert has gone sort of broader and wider at times, and not only just focused on firearms, which is something that makes him additionally very, very interesting, but um, at FN, some of the things that would not exist today if it had not been for Leon Hubert, the Beretta 84 or the Beretta 80 series, period, which is basically a very light adaptation of the Browning BDA 380. The Beretta 92 arguably would not exist without that gun, because there's so much. If you ever take a look, Leon Hubert designed the Browning BDA 380, which was known as the FN 140DA. That is exclusively Leon Hubert's design work. Beretta got the rights to change the manual of safety and open the top of the slide and call it a Beretta 84, and which they did, and it's the very same handgun. Well, if you take a look at the Beretta 92, the schematic, and compare it to the Beretta 84, you see obviously the Beretta 92 would not exist without the Beretta 84, having preceded it in terms of the design. So in the early 80s, when the pistol trials happened, which ultimately, the Beretta 92 was chosen. It's those pistol trials started out with FN having 3 entrants, all of those being Leon Hubert designs. The Beretta 92, which was arguably a design that would never have existed if it had not been for Leon Hubert's work of the Browning BDA 380, and Leon Hubert was FN's representative at those pistol trials here in the United States. So you got to arguably say this guy was looking a lot like John Browning in the early 80s. I mean, when it come to the early 80s pistol trials in terms of designers, this guy was the dog.
And how did you come to be affiliated with him? I don't know if I've ever asked you that before or not. I know you've made multiple trips to Belgium and met with him, and he is now your product design engineer.
He is our chief weapons and modifications designer. Yes.
Yeah. How did that all come about?
Just step by step. I mean, Leon Hubert is in his mid 80s now, and so his own company, as far as RDIH, due to his age, it needed a place to land, and he did not have offspring who were following in his same course of vocation, and so that was, I guess you'd say, timing on our part, but this was sort of kind of a knowledge base, I think, for me, that started before BH Spring Solutions started, and it was actually on a gun forum where a gentleman who I just, in fact, heard from today, so I would say, took me under his wing and explained the SFS system to me. And he had a definite firearms and law enforcement background, and he explained why I think it was an FM detective, and with the SFS system on it was his chosen concealed carry pistol. And he pointed out things about the system that I had never heard anybody point out about the system, because they'd never been marketed by the company who marketed it, prior to us. And he talked me into it, and I bought one of the systems from the company that was, marketing them at the time, and I managed to install it myself, and I was just knocked out. That such a system could exist that I had not heard of, until now. And my goodness, why weren't they marketing this aspect and that aspect and things? So, obviously I never forgot it. And when Slav and I started BH Spring Solutions, I explained and introduced the system to him, and I think I had managed to get a system over to him. He installed it on one of his high powers. He loved it. And we had actually made an attempt a time or two to reach Leon or his son, who was, working, with him in the business at the time. And we weren't able to, reach them. And, you really never know what that means. And then Slav reached out to them one day and we got a response. And, apparently the relationship with the previous company was not what they were wanting it to be anymore. And they were looking, it's just one of those things, timing is that. And for us to be able to work with someone of Leon Hubert's knowledge, our biggest fear is we'll never scratch the surface of what his true capabilities are, because in so many ways he's so far out ahead of us and where we have so far been,
For anybody who doesn't know, and I wish we could demonstrate this for you all to see exactly how it works, but could you describe what the SFS system does?
Sure. The SFS system, or sometimes called the fast safety system, it allows you to carry a hammer, a single action pistol, a 1911 or a high power, with your hammer in the forward position, but be, quote, cocked and locked, so that when you pull the safety off, the hammer springs to the cocked position ready to fire. And when you want to go on safe, you press the hammer forward, the safeties cam up, and you carry in the hammer forward position. There's almost a couple dozen different things that this betters for condition one carry. I know some of the biggest ones for me, I didn't have a hammer sticking into my side fat anymore. I didn't have a hammer getting wound up in the inside of my vest pocket of my suit coats, which was bad on, on my horizontal shoulder holsters for that with that cocked hammer. And there was, other downsides too. And, but that is the SFS system in a nutshell. It also, but when Leon Hubert designed it, he did not just design a system that would do just that. In designing it, he also designed into the system an additional drop safety, a drop safety that not the muzzle drop kind, but the hammer drop kind. In other words, a lot of us, have been programmed to think, muzzle drop safety series 80, and I don't necessarily disagree, but when you think about it, you drop on the muzzle, it is pointed towards the ground. When you drop it on the hammer, it's usually pointed at where it came from. And that's usually, right, you're in the wrong part of that geography, right? And so he designed into the SFS system an additional hammer drop safety, so that if the pistol is dropped on the hammer, first of all, if it's cocked, it makes it go on to the on safe position. But if it were to happen to fracture a mechanism, it creates an additional barrier between the hammer and the firing pin until it's time for the weapon to fire, which when you think about it, that's pretty insightful. You create a system that does one thing, but then it does a lot of different things, to better and increase the margins of safety.
And at this point, BH Spring Solutions has branched out beyond just the springs and the SFS. You guys are selling barrels. You've got trigger systems. You've got sights. You've got total refinishing systems or packages. I mean, I don't even know everything. So if there's anything that I'm forgetting, please throw that out. I forgot about the recoil reducing recoil spring guide. So, just
the world's only drop-in manual safety for Glock pistols. Another Leon Hubert design invention. If we could call what we do in a word, we would call it tactical safety, because virtually everything that we offer in one way or another, we believe adds margins of safety into the equation, but without sacrificing any tactical elements or effectiveness elements, if you will. And that's I can't say that we've completely figured out how to market that yet, but I know that it seems to be a common theme in a lot of what we do is better function, higher margins of safety, and higher performance. So,
and somewhere along the way, this branched out also to other handguns. I mentioned the 1911. You guys are doing CZ75s nowadays. The Makarov, I believe, PPKs, PPK,
yes.
PPKs. What else am I forgetting there? I know you've got a bunch of them.
Well, the high power is what I think most people know us for first. 1911s, we have done SFS conversions on virtually every 1911 that we've had put in our hands, and that's, as you can imagine, that's a lot. Even like your double stack magazine, like Rock Island makes this incredible hand cannon, like a 15-shot 10mm 1911, right? And we put SFS on that, no problem. And we which that's that's cool. And all the way down like to your 3-inch Kimbers. And it's an incredibly versatile system. And I think the 1911 world has only just started to see that system. That again is a Leon Hubert invention. Our work with the CZ75 actually is, we've not even hardly even started to even tell that story yet, to be honest with you. We developed our CZ75 line of spring kits wanting to be the most comprehensive, most complete possible CZ75 spring kit. Now, the reason that this is necessary is because the CZ75, if you compare a CZ75 with a 1911 and the number of springs involved, is just incredible. I mean, there's a lot of springs in a CZ75, and you have this kind of round robin effect in the CZ75 that is kind of rather unique. And so it's like almost impossible to ever push here without bulging over there. And you never change one thing, because no, it's no such thing. It's just one spring changing in one thing. Who we first were really wanting to serve in that picture was the competition shooter. In other words, the competition shooter knows what to do with a spring kit that's got recoil springs that range from 9 pounds to 22. Everybody else is never going to use all of that. The guy that's doing his own concoctions of reload intensities as far as powder and this guy knows exactly what to do with them, So, but another part of the CZ75 story that we've not really exactly written yet, that we're actually just now getting to, is how that product can be a cool product for the CZ75 carry guy, which is usually a CZ75 compact, and how that same spring system and some of the same approaches can bring some very desirable benefits to those guys. Our service department right now, I believe we have on Gunbroker 14 or 15 custom handguns, and they range from Makarovs to many 1911s. We have 9mm, 30 Luger, and 40 Smith & Wesson high powers available on there right now. And this is not BH manufacturing guns. It's very interesting because it's really us just in our own way showing what we can do in the BH Custom Shop Service Department for your CZ75 or your high power or your 1911. And we've managed to do what we do with that concept by being a limited focus shop. In other words, if you have a SIG that's a 1911, you can send it to us and we can help you. But if your SIG is anything else and it's not a 1911, we won't have any way to help you with that. but what it has done is it has given us the chance to be efficient and knowledgeable about a few handguns and be able to provide a level of service at a reasonable investment for guys that create some better than average results. And again, um, our theory has been from the very beginning, and we've never been proven wrong yet that I remember, is step one is always baseline the pistol. Baseline the pistol means you get all of the moving parts regulated properly. And once you've gotten all the parts regulated properly, which generally means everything's got to be cleaned, proper lubrication, new springs, or optimal springs, or springs that are most likely to accomplish the type of performance requirements that you have for whatever this is, for whatever role that it is. And now, once you've gotten new springs in the entire pistol, any remaining problems that persist after that are real. Anything that was before but is fixed now was a tired spring. And if you can eliminate all the problems caused by tired springs right up front, you'd be amazed how many problems you can head off and solve. But more importantly, it also, if you have a real problem that is either a structural problem or a worn out hard parts problem or something like that, eliminating out all the possible spring scenarios up front is a big benefit towards getting down the road to getting that whatever it is handled.
Well, and I know as a longtime armorer that if there was an officer that had a handgun and it was working and all of a sudden something started not working quite right, many times the issue was going to be a tired spring. Either the recoil spring was getting tired, or the magazine spring was getting tired, or some other spring was getting tired. And if you swap that out, all of a sudden the reliability would come back. So what you just said makes perfect sense.
I think a lot of handguns get put on the shelf and get replaced because they're just not as good as, it just isn't function as good as it used to be. And it seems like well, that would be a big gunsmith bill if I took it to the smith to figure out what's not, whatever. And it's just easier to go out and buy a different gun when a lot of times, a rather insignificant price, spring kit. The reason that we came up with, and for several years, we did not even have individual springs available at our website because we were kind of so hardcore about this one concept. And that is, there just aren't that many single springs, for example, in a high power pistol that you would want to change out only that spring. Because changing it out without changing out any other cooperative or opposing springs that are impacted by the spring you just changed out, you are at high risk of developing a malfunction based on changing a spring, which is the reason we came up with the concept of spring kits in the beginning, was because the only straightforward way to change a firing pin spring is to change that mainspring or hammer spring that has to make that hammer smack into the firing pin that's being opposed by the spring. Without changing that, you are running the risk that happened to me, which I induced my own fail to fires when I was trying to kill a possum that was trying to chase me down on my sidewalk one night. This is a true story. This is pre-BH, okay? I had gotten a hold of I had started in around the 10th year of ownership of my high power, or no, 15th year of ownership of my high power. About 10,000 rounds through it, I had my first malfunction. I went online trying to figure out what it was. And what I found was probably right. Tired extractor spring. So I ordered a new extractor spring from where I could. And I also ordered a new recoil spring. And with that new recoil spring came a extra heavy firing pin spring or something. And I hadn't ordered it; it just came with it, And trying not to, say who this was I ordered this from, but okay. So I got what I ordered. I installed the extractor spring. That was no problem. I installed the recoil spring, no problem. And I have this extra strength firing pin spring. And I thought, well, gee, that's nice. And I looked up on YouTube how to get that installed, and I installed that and went out, shot it a few times. Everything seems okay. And I'm walking up my sidewalk in the dark one night, and I look, and here's this very kind of large sort of animal that was a very large possum, decides to face me down my sidewalk and then start coming towards me, And so I pull out my high power and pull the safety off and pull the trigger, and nothing happened. And the possum's still coming. This was the moment that happened in real life, that when Slava and I started talking about, well, what would we do if we did have, better high power springs, and man, we got to sell them as a kit. We got to sell them as a whole. You got to change everything, because don't let this happen to you. Somehow I did have the presence of mind to manually cock the hammer and give it another try. And the second time the possum did lay down to sleep. But my goodness, you think about the implications of that, and it happened because I didn't know any better. I didn't think that, that 15 or whatever old hammer strut spring could be too tired to overcome that extra powerful firing pin spring, which it was that night. So hence the rationale for, it's chasing problems with individual springs can just open up a whole Pandora's box of stuff, because that never gets you to what we call a baseline. And regulating the movement of the moving parts in the handgun is the baseline, if you will. Having that where if everything is okay, this should work. And it should work reliably, and it should work accurately, and it should work the way it's supposed to. And if you have all the correct springs, and you do, and you still have a problem, then it's not a spring problem, you are so much closer to solving that. Chasing with individual springs, can cause you to be a victim of a possum.
I'm glad the possum didn't get you that night.
They're pretty slow.
We have been talking here a little over 40 minutes now, and I've been basically peppering you with questions. Is there anything that you would like to get out to all the folks that are watching with maybe new information about BH Spring Solutions, new products coming out, anything like that? I just want to open it up to you for anything you want to get out there that I didn't touch on yet.
Well, one thing I would say is if you're not a subscriber to the BH Spring Solutions e-newsletter, that's an easy thing to do at bhspringsolutions.com. You can't miss that when you go there. And that's the primary way today that we keep in touch with what we call our BH veterans, which is anybody who is a subscriber to that newsletter or is a previous customer of ours. We are getting ready to start a promotion right now that's going to be a combination of spring optimizations and refinishes for the non-high power pistols that we specialize in. And I think this is going to be a very cool thing for a lot of our clientele to kind of get a little bit of a dream and a vision for some of these other, fantastic handguns they've got that are not, high powers. But, the Makarov pistol was kind of a natural for us because, around the same time that the high power was the king of the world, the Makarov was the king of the Eastern Bloc part of the world. And, these two were kind of the king of the world at the same time. And my partner just happens to live over in Makarov Central, and which this was sort of a natural, for us. And so any Makarov knowledge that we need, I mean, he's right there where it's the richest and the most reliable, and it's given us access to products that are very unique for that pistol, which are, I think, cool for folks, here in the United States. The the interesting things that we have had with the 1911 pistol, and the compatibility of the 1911 SFS with so many different calibers and sizes and manufacturers, is something that no one would have ever known unless they really tried it enough times. And at this point, we've had lots and lots of 1911s through our custom shop, and we've never failed to fit 1911 SFS to one yet. Assuming that it has a standard size grip frame in the area of the safeties in the back of the grip frame. So,
and I know I've seen some very compact 1911s, some of the little 3-inch barrel jobs that you folks put the SFS on, all the way up to obviously the full size, and even some extremely large 1911s.
Yes, so. yes. That's a fantastic aspect of the 1911 SFS system is, without a doubt, it's highly preferable. I mean, this time of year, I mean, if you can have a small 45 in your shorts pocket, comfortably, in the middle of the summer heat like this, I mean, well, gosh, why wouldn't you not do that, right? And I mean, I do. And you never think of a 1911 as a pocket pistol, but I mean, hey, you got the SFS system on it, and you're not worrying about snagging a cocked hammer. If you have to pull it from the pocket, it just creates a lot of possibilities. I think for a lot of people, it makes a single action pistol. And I if we've got time, I want to mention this because I've had plenty of ex-Army guys, ex-Marines. I'm not sure how to say that correctly, not ex-Marines, because I know, but who have told me on the phone, I understand, technically or intuitively that the cocked and locked hammer of my high power of the 1911 is no problem. I just don't like it, and literally they really just don't like it. And there's not actually that strong of a reason not to, but they just don't. The SFS system is a confidence builder. It is a source of reassurance. A hammer that's forward on a semi-auto handgun and a hammer that's cocked, appearance-wise on a semi-auto handgun, they mean two different things. And I just don't think anybody should be like ashamed of it, if that's them, because I got to be honest with you. I mean, I carried prior to SFS, I carried my 1911s and my high powers cocked and locked, and I got my, hammers, wrapped around T-shirts, trying to produce them, under clothing during drills, and and I fought with that in the clearing clothing bit, and all that. And SFS just simplified all that. Mm-hmm. And I admit it means something different to me too. So I think for a lot of guys, I think it makes the 1911, and especially even the smaller 1911s that are more concealable and carryable, it makes them a more accommodating, a more I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for. It's just like it was made for the role. It was made for the condition 1 carry role, and the system was, and it can be easily appreciated for that.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. I know I've used the SFS. It has always been an impressive system to me. I hope to be able to show that again very soon on the Charles Daly high power that you folks worked over for me. So that's going to be coming up. There's a teaser for all you out there watching. That'll be coming up in a video in the very near future. So I did a preliminary look at that handgun several months ago. It has gone off. It is back with me. So watch for it coming soon in a video, and I will be showing the SFS along with all the other modifications and improvements that were made to that handgun. And Mark, I think what I'm going to do is look down through here, and if any of you have questions for Mark about any of the services or products from BH Spring Solutions or anything to do with BH Spring Solutions at all, go ahead and post them, and I will bring your question up. I know I saw one on here earlier, and I don't know the answer to this. Are the springs still made in Bulgaria, the ones for BH Spring Solutions?
Yes.
Okay. And let me see if I can find any other ones quick while I'm waiting here. It looks like a lot of guys talking back and forth to each other. A lot of conversations going on amongst the people that are watching. Any issues with the SFS that come about from heat, from extended firing, or anything else?
We've never had any such thing. And when, in fact, the best way we can point to that is there's a YouTube series of videos for the TISAS BR9 that we did at BH Spring Solutions, and it was right after the Browning High Power was discontinued and the first Turkish TISAS BR9 came into the United States, and we did a 6,000 round test. And in that 6,000 round test was the SFS system. And what we would do is we would shoot until the pistol either locked up or it was getting too hot to hold in our hand. And we dropped it in a bucket of water, the way the 1911 was dropped in a bucket of water in 1910 when it became the U.S. Army pistol. That was the way that the 1911 was cooled. So we thought we would just test the same way, right? And that's how we treated that pistol for about 6,000 rounds. SFS was on that pistol, and it was treated the same way. So it went typically 200 to 250, sometimes 300 consecutive rounds, no cooling. Then it was dropped in a bucket of water, and and the whole bit, and get it out, shake it off. Every 1,000 rounds, we detail stripped the pistol, cleaned everything meticulously, lubed everything. But in between for each 1,000, that's how that got treated. The SFS system got treated the same way. I have an SFS system on my personal carry high power that went on there in about 2006 and has about 25,000 rounds, 30,000 rounds on it. And FN made 5,000 SFS high powers in 2003 and 2004. They were imported into the United States by FN, and most of that 5,000, both in 40s and in 9mm, were sold in the United States. I purchased one of those one time that were, quote, factory SFS high powers. Same SFS system, same parts. In fact, FN bought those systems from Léon Hubert at the time. The Browning Parts Department had the parts supply at the time for servicing those pistols. They said they had no history of providing any parts for the system. I can say we have no history of providing any kind of numbers of any specific parts. In the high power SFS system. So, it's a system that's been around now for 20 plus years and in continuous use for 20 plus years.
And that's extremely impressive. I've got a question coming up here from Mark Hankins that I'll bring up on the screen here. And he says, are there any 1911s that can't use, and I'm assuming means the SFS system, are there any of them out there that won't take the SFS?
Any of your mini 1911s, like your SIG P238 or P938, those are like a mini 1911 inspired handgun, like in 9mm or 380. Those not being, quote, real 1911s, they're not a standard width grip frame in the back. Any that are a standard width grip frame in the back, yes, they are compatible. Okay. So far, we've not found one that is not.
And let me see what here. I got another question addressed to you. I'll bring this one up here too. This is from Werewolf 6. The I'm all for the SFS, but not a fan of the hammer spur. Is there any way to be able to keep the existing hammer for their 1911 or MC P35 ops?
Yeah, the hammers were specifically designed the way they were and when they were designed to be very no snag. Because the assumed role for SFS at the time that it was developed was law enforcement or civilian concealed carry, condition 1 application specifically. So they were designed purposely to be a no snag type hammer. Both hammers, though, however, if you take a look at the high power SFS hammer on top, it has serrations on the top. It's possible to manually cock that hammer. So if you pull the trigger and for some reason it goes click and the possum is still coming, you can manually cock either system, and hopefully you keep going that way. No, right now there are no other options for the hammers.
Yeah, I saw another question on here. This is from Bill Barnett. Is
Hey, Bill,
doing anything with the Gersan? And I think these are the ones we were talking about earlier. They're actually the PI pistols, the new ones that are coming in.
Yep. Our FM detective barrels are a really good upgrade in the Gersan MCP35 PI model. We will also have an upgraded full-length guide rod for that pistol. It will be actually our design guide rod for the FM detective pistol, which is basically the clone of the P35, the MCP35 PI. And we don't have that product finished or made yet. But yes, right now, all of our FM detective springs will work in your PI, except our recoil springs will not work on that guide rod that Gersan made. We've tested our own guide rod and our own recoil springs that we prescribed for the FM detective. We are feeling like our system controls the recoil better and probably will control the recoil more long term than the flat wire spring, single flat wire spring, and the guide rod that Gersan has designed. But a part of that, remains to be seen, because nobody's fired this thing 5,000 rounds to know yet. But I can tell you that when we put our guide rod, but we only have prototypes right now, but we will have our guide rod, which will allow a dual spring coil spring over a coil spring, FM detective style, and essentially, which we have had tame recoil distance out of a Gersan P35, pull back the recoil distance, or the distance that the ejecting empty shell casings are going from the pistol, by about 2 to 3 feet. And that's not to say that the extraction distance with the Gersan guide rod and spring prescription was excessive. It was, in our test pistol, it was around 9 feet. And when you start to get into the 10 to 12 feet range, you're really getting close to unlocking the barrel before the bullet's left the end of the barrel, which means you'd have a bullet leaving the end of a moving barrel, which is never good for accuracy. So, out of the box, 9 feet, what we can say is okay. Our system controlled extraction distance into the 6 to 7 feet range, which is probably going to give you better longevity, time before you're going to have to, replace a recoil spring. It's always been the weakness of any of your 9mm and 45 high powers and 1911s. You start shortening that barrel, you also start shortening the life of your recoil spring, because you're asking the same amount of work out of a lot less spring, which means you got to replace them more often.
And
hopefully in our test pistols, the BH Advanced barrel for FM detective in the Gersan PI has been a good improvement as far as accuracy. Sorry, Howard.
No problem. I've got a couple of questions here. One of them is from Logan Warman, asking if the system's compatible with the high power. I assume he's talking about the SFS, and yes, that is definitely compatible with the high power. And I saw another question down here. Here it is. Does BH make I assume this is a recoil spring for the Kimber Micro 380?
Okay, thanks for the question. And no, we do not currently service that model. Nice little handgun, though.
Mark Hankins, do you have any opinions on flat wire springs?
They're fine. We don't make any flat wire springs. When we kind of faced a flat wire spring that was the OEM spring in our test CZ75B compact pistol. Those at that time, and I think still come with full length guide rod and a flat wire recoil spring, if I'm not mistaken. I know the flat wire recoil spring part is true. And we went with a round wire coil spring. And we believe we get at least as good of longevity and performance, consistency of performance. Flat wire springs, the big plus is you can fit more coils in a smaller space. And theoretically that should be a plus, but again, the wire is flat, and they're just like any other springs. They're never going to provide resistance forever. They're not. Resistance is expenditure of energy in spring speak, if you will. When a spring is compressed, it's trying to get itself back to its relaxed dimensional length, and it's exerting energy trying to make itself get back there. And nothing exerts energy forever, or we'd be running our world on it. And springs are no different. They tire, and when they tire, they start exerting less force. And the thing that either maybe gun manufacturers either don't want you to know or something is, typically when springs are installed, they're compressed. When a spring is compressed, it's exerting energy, trying to get itself back to its relaxed dimensional length. That means they're expending energy 24/7. And they never stop expending energy. Sometimes they expend more energy than other times when they're asked to work or work under pressure or work with heat factors and things, influencing. But these things are hard working things in a gun, and especially against the heat factors and things that we put them through. And a more proactive change out interval in most handguns is a very, very desirable thing if you can get the springs, and especially if you can replace all of the springs at the same time. It's just a highly, highly desirable thing, because moving parts that are regulated properly wear less and they perform better. And so that's our belief in that was why Slav and I kept doing what we kept doing, was because we kept enjoying what we were doing, because our guns kept running better. And so how can you not, once you get the hang of and how we figured out some of this stuff that we figured out was, believe it or not, this is going to really get you, because I don't think you know this, Howard. The way we figured out how to make the best springs for a high power pistol was we acquired all the different high powers that had ever been made, and we studied how the different manufacturers had made a magazine release spring, or a mainspring, or a recoil spring, or all the springs. And then we tried all the different ones that the manufacturers had used over the years, and then we tried some designs of our own. But what it allowed us to do is to see what all had been tried before and try it. And the learning that went into this was profound. I mean, we could have never learned the things that we did if we had not, what would you say, got into the trenches that deep and studied everything like we could get our hands on. Which, I mean, when you start buying one of each, you know, an Inglis and a Careen and a FM and a Browning and an Arcus, and you start comparing all these different springs and how the different manufacturers tried to make this better or that, you know, this, um, and then you start trying these in combinations, and what you learn just, I don't think could be learned a different way than that. And that's how we did it at first. And fortunately, we didn't have to keep doing it that way for a long, long time, because we were able to explain what we were seeing to a great spring manufacturer in Bulgaria, who is widely regarded in the spring making industry as being one of the true premier manufacturing facilities in the world. And
Wow.
we feel so, you know, it's profound as it can be when you walk through a facility and, you know, and you see these springs that are like almost like they stand up and they're like my height, and they're like suspension spring for like some earth moving equipment, you know. And you go back to another part of this place and you think, oh, this little machine here must have ran out of spring wire, you know. But then I look and, you know, there's this little bowl and it's a bunch of little springs that look like hairs, and except for the fact that there's a pile of them, I would not even be able to see this. And springs for laparoscopic surgical tools.
Wow.
And I mean, when I say this, I mean, when they know about, when I say they know about regulating force and movement of pieces and parts, um, I just can't believe that we have had the opportunity to work with some of the people and the companies that we do, because it's just like almost, how you'd say it. Um, it's like Slav and I had to do what we're doing now, because, you know, we just started trying to do this stuff, you know, like for our own selves and our own guns and our friends. And, you know, and then we found people who, you know, we were able to work with, and, you know, and it just, you know, so when you're enjoying what you do as much as we do, you know, you just keep doing it. And if you can't tell, I mean, we just love what we do.
I got one more question I'm going to bring up here, and we're going to be getting close to time to wrap things up. But this is from, whoops, that's not the one I was trying to get. Sorry, Bjorn. Where'd that go? This thing took a jump. There we go. This is from Dan the Wolfman, longtime YouTuber, longtime viewer of mine, and he's asking about the double action high power. I actually ran across one of those not too long ago, and he's talking about if he manages to get one and it needed work, are you able to work on the double action high powers?
I believe the pistol that he's talking about is called two different things: an HPDA, also called a BDA-9.
Mm-hmm.
This also was marketed as the BDA-0. The BDA-9 and the BDA-0 also had a compact version, and Leon Hubert did all of this. Our chief weapons and modifications designer, that's his work. So yeah, we kind of have an inside track on. Now, having said that, we don't have readily available springs. We don't have readily available parts. So what I can tell you is that pistol is a genius pistol. The BDA-9 pistol has design aspects that were revolutionary when it was designed, especially this moving firing pin retaining plate, which is the drop safety. Leon Hubert, I talk about the drop safety element of the SFS system. He developed a moving firing pin retaining plate, no kidding, in the BDA-9 that is a drop safety both directions. So it's a drop safety muzzle and it's a drop safety hammer, all in one device, not in two devices. It is truly an outstanding handgun. I would say that your best bet on one of those, if you find one, is going to be a low round count, if you can find one. That is, because parts are not going to be something you're probably going to find. Springs are something that we can always make springs for you. We have an inside track on that. So we'll always be able to get you springs 9 times out of 10 in one of those pistols. That's all you're ever going to need. Honestly. Now, I'm going to throw out a little tidbit of knowledge that your BDA 9 guys or your HPDA guys, the gentleman like the pistol that your gentleman just asked about, Leo Hubert designed that when he worked at FN. The magazines for the FN BDA 9 or HPDA, the gun that the gentleman was just asking about, those magazines are also a redesigned high power magazine. So if you have a BDA 9, you can interchange that magazine out of your BDA 9 into a high power, and it will fit. Not only will it fit, quite frankly, it's a better magazine design. And most people have no idea this. Now, you cannot go the other way. You can't take regular high power magazines and put it in a BDA 9. But Leon Hubert specifically made the BDA 9 magazines, which are fantastic. He specifically made those so you could take those and put it into your high power pistol. And I do that. When I carry my high powers, I actually have a BDA 9 magazine I use for carry.
All right. Well, I really, really enjoyed this, Mark. Thank you for coming on the show this evening. Hopefully everyone watching got something out of it. If you don't mind, I'm going to move you just out of the window here, but don't go anywhere. And I'm going to wrap up the show. And
if I may,
sure, go ahead. Absolutely.
Thank you for what you are doing. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your friendship over the years, very, very, very much. And I just can't tell you what a pleasure it is to join you in this in this venue. Thank you for doing it, and thank you everybody for watching.
It's been my pleasure, Mark. If you'll give me just a moment here. So there you go, everyone. That was Mark Allen from BH Spring Solutions joining us on the show tonight. And as I told Mark, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I hope all of you did as well. I know that since Mark was on the show, we really didn't get a chance to talk too much back and forth. I hope you'll forgive me for that. I promise I'll be doing a live stream soon that will be just me and all of you, and we can hopefully exchange some information back and forth. Don't forget the premiere video tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we'll get together for the live chat. And that video is, I forget how long it is, 25-ish minutes, something like that. So I have plenty of time to chat during that. Otherwise, I look forward to hearing from all of you in the comment section. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all your support. Thank you for watching the videos. Thank you to my channel members for the contribution you make to the channel. I absolutely could not do what I do on YouTube without the support that I get from all of you. And without all of you, I would just be some guy talking to myself in front of a camera. So thank you to all of you. You have no idea how much you all mean to me. And until next time, everyone, good shooting and have a good evening. Bye-bye for now.